The sun dipped low behind the manicured lawns and pristine houses of Maplewood Estates, casting long shadows over the seemingly perfect neighborhood. It was the kind of place that looked like it belonged in a luxury real estate magazine. Gleaming driveways, neatly trimmed hedges, and not a single stray piece of litter in sight. But beneath the polished exterior, Maplewood Estates had a secret, a hidden force that kept it in check. The Homeowners Association. They weren't just an organization, they were a regime. And their self-appointed security force wasn't just a group of neighborhood watch volunteers. They acted like real cops, complete with uniforms, fake badges, and an iron grip on anyone who dared to step out of line. Daniel Reeves didn't know that when he moved in. He had spent years saving up for a dream home. Maplewood Estates had seemed like the perfect place. Quiet, safe, a community that promised a peaceful life. But within his first 24 hours, Daniel started to notice things that didn't sit right. At first, it was the way people acted. Neighbors kept their heads down. Conversations were whispered. Families hesitated before stepping outside, as if unseen eyes were always watching. Then there were the so-called security guards. They weren't ordinary guards. They patrolled the streets like a private police force, wearing tactical vests and carrying radios that crackled with coded messages. Their presence was everywhere, watching from street corners, loitering near parked cars, standing in driveways as if they had some unspoken authority. Daniel brushed it off at first. Maybe they were just a little overzealous about safety. That thought lasted until the first fine arrived. An official-looking envelope, sealed with the HOA's emblem, appeared in his mailbox less than a day after moving in. Inside, a printed notice. Violation. Unauthorized vehicle positioning fine. $250 due. Immediately, Daniel frowned. His car had been parked perfectly in his own driveway. How was that a violation? When he asked his next-door neighbor about it, the man, middle-aged, gray around the temples, eyes sunken with exhaustion, just shook his head. "Don't fight them," he muttered under his breath. "They always win." That was Daniel's first warning. He just didn't realize it yet. And soon he would find out exactly what happened when someone challenged the HOA. Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to hit that like button, share it with friends, and subscribe for more awesome content. And while you're at it, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. All right, let's keep going. Daniel Reeves stared at the violation notice in his hand, a deep crease forming between his brows. $250 for what? His car had been parked neatly in his own driveway, not blocking a sidewalk, not in anyone else's space. This had to be a mistake. Deciding to handle it directly, he grabbed the notice and marched down the street toward the HOA office, a sleek glass-fronted building at the edge of the community park. The moment he stepped inside, he felt it, the chill of controlled authority. A woman sat behind a dark wooden desk, her nameplate reading Margaret Holloway, HOA Administrator. She peered at him over thin, silver-framed glasses. "Can I help?" "You?" she asked, her tone carrying an air of forced politeness. Daniel placed the fine notice on the counter. "Yeah, I think there's been a mistake. I got fined for a parking violation, but my car was in my driveway the whole time." Margaret exhaled through her nose, flipping open a binder. "Lot number?" 27. Her eyes scanned a page. Then, without looking up, she said, "No mistake. You violated Article 14, Section B, improper vehicle positioning." Daniel's patience thinned. Improper. It was parked straight, in my driveway. A beat of silence. Then she finally met his eyes. There was something unsettling in her expression. Something cold. "Rules are rules, Mr. Reeves. No exceptions." Daniel opened his mouth to argue, but a movement outside caught his attention. Through the window, two uniformed HOA security officers stood near the sidewalk, watching him. They weren't ordinary rent-a-cops. Their black tactical vests were embroidered with the words HOA Security Enforcement in bold letters. Their boots were military-grade, and their expressions flat, unreadable. A deep, uneasy feeling twisted in Daniel's stomach. "Look," he said, lowering his voice. "I just moved in. I didn't even know about this rule. Can't we just—" Margaret closed the binder with a sharp thud. "This is your official warning. she said, voice ice cold. Further infractions will result in escalated consequences. Escalated consequences? Daniel clenched his jaw. He could feel the weight of the two guards' stares pressing into him. This wasn't about a parking fine. This was about control. Slowly, he picked up the notice and walked out. As he passed the guards, one of them, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a buzz cut, spoke in a low voice. "Best to follow the rules, Mr. Reeves." Daniel turned to face him. "Or what?" The guard smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Or you'll regret it." Daniel locked eyes with him for a second longer, then turned and walked away. His pulse was pounding now, his instincts on high alert. From the nearby houses, curtains shifted. People had been watching. A neighbor, an older man with weary eyes, stood near his porch. When Daniel made eye contact, the man shook his head subtly. Then, under his breath, he muttered something that sent a chill down Daniel's spine. "Don't fight them. They always win." But Daniel wasn't the type to back down, and he was about to find out just how far the HOA would go to make sure he followed their rules. The harassment started subtly. A second violation notice appeared in Daniel's mailbox, this time for lawn maintenance non-compliance. The fine? $150. Then came the third, trash bin placement violation, $100. It wasn't just the fines. The HOA security guards, or whatever they really were, began patrolling near his house more often. They lingered at the end of his driveway, their dark sunglasses reflecting back at him like hollow, soulless mirrors. Then, one morning, Daniel stepped outside to find a bright yellow boot clamped onto his front tire. His stomach turned. A printed notice was taped to his windshield. Unauthorized vehicle storage violation, $500 fine. Due immediately. Rage bubbled in his chest. This was getting out of hand. Daniel stormed toward the security booth at the neighborhood entrance, where two guards stood outside chatting in low voices. The same two men from before. "Hey!" Daniel barked, holding up the violation notice. "You want to explain why my car's been booted? I didn't break any laws." The taller guard, the one with the buzz cut, turned toward him slowly, a smirk curling at the corner of his mouth. "Your car was parked improperly." "Improperly?" Daniel snapped. "I was in my own damn driveway." The second guard, a wiry man with sharp eyes, stepped forward, tilting his head. "We enforce the HOA's regulations, Mr. Reeves. It's best to comply." Daniel clenched his fists. "You're not real cops. You can't just do whatever you want." Buzzcut chuckled and slowly reached into his vest, pulling out a metal badge. It looked official at first glance, a round emblem stamped with the words Neighborhood Safety Enforcement Unit. But something was off. There was no city seal, no police insignia, no real authority. Daniel narrowed his eyes. "This is fake. You guys are nothing but HOA goons playing dress-up." The smirk disappeared. Buzzcut took a slow step closer. "You're making a mistake, Reeves." Daniel didn't flinch. "No, you are. This is illegal, and I'm going to prove it." A tense silence stretched between them. Finally, the wiry guard exhaled, cracking his knuckles. "Suit yourself." Daniel turned and walked away, heart pounding. They weren't just power-hungry security guards. They were running a full-blown intimidation racket. And he wasn't the only victim. That evening, as Daniel was researching HOA regulations on his laptop, a quiet knock sounded at his door. He opened it to find Lisa Thompson, the single mother who lived 2 houses down. She glanced around nervously before stepping inside. "I heard what happened," she whispered. Daniel frowned. "With the car?" Lisa nodded. "They did the same thing to me last year, and it got worse." She hesitated, rubbing her arms as if trying to ward off a chill. "At first, it was just the fines," she continued. "Then the late fees. Then, one night, I woke up to find them outside my house, just standing there, watching." Daniel's stomach dropped. "Watching?" She swallowed hard. "They came to my door the next morning, said my security cameras were a violation and that I needed to take them down. When I refused, they shut off my power for 2 days. Daniel stared at her in disbelief. "They can't do that." Lisa let out a bitter laugh. "Who's going to stop them? They've got the HOA board in their pocket. The cops won't get involved in neighborhood disputes. And if you push too hard—" She hesitated, lowering her voice. "They'll find a way to make you leave." Daniel's jaw tightened. This wasn't just a bad HOA. This was organized corruption. And if Lisa was right, he had just put himself in their crosshairs. Daniel sat in his dimly lit living room, staring at his laptop screen. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, heart pounding as he typed Martin Holloway HOA corruption into the search bar. A second later, the results loaded, and his blood ran cold. 3 separate lawsuits, multiple allegations of fraud, a history of financial mismanagement. Martin Holloway, the HOA president of Maplewood Estates, wasn't just a power-hungry bureaucrat. He was a seasoned manipulator, a man who had been sued by homeowners in 2 other neighborhoods before this one. Each time, the cases mysteriously disappeared, either dismissed or settled out of court. It all started making sense now. The excessive fines, the fake security force, the intimidation tactics. This wasn't just about enforcing HOA rules. This was a racket. Daniel exhaled sharply and leaned back in his chair. If he wanted to take these people down, he needed proof. Over the next few days, Daniel turned his house into a surveillance hub. He installed hidden cameras, one above his garage, another tucked into the bushes near the sidewalk, and a third inside his car facing the street. And almost immediately, he started catching them in the act. Footage number 1. 2 HOA security guards trespassing onto his property at 2:13 a.m., shining flashlights through his windows. Footage number 2. A man, one of Holloway's board members, planting a violation notice on a neighbor's lawn, only for the HOA to find them the next morning. Footage number 3. The security goons pulling over a resident's teenage son, flashing their fake badges, and demanding to see his driver's license. They were acting like a private police force, completely outside the law. Daniel carefully archived the footage, making multiple copies in case they tried to wipe it. But he needed more than just video evidence. He needed someone who knew the system inside out. That's when he met Ed Mitchell. Ed was the kind of man who had seen it all. In his late 60s, the retired lawyer had once worked high-profile corporate cases. But now, he spent his days tending to his front lawn and occasionally butting heads with the HOA. Daniel knocked on his door one afternoon, hoping for advice. Ed answered with a gruff expression, eyeing him up and down. "You're the new guy. What took you so long?" Daniel hesitated. "You know who I am?" Ed smirked. "Kid, I've been waiting for someone like you to show up. Come in." Inside Ed's home was a treasure trove of legal documents, HOA bylaws, state property laws, court cases. He had been documenting their corruption for years. He just never had enough leverage to act. "You got proof?" Ed asked, pouring himself a glass of bourbon. Daniel pulled out his laptop and showed him the surveillance footage. For the first time, Ed looked genuinely impressed. "Well, I'll be damned." He took a slow sip, his eyes flicking to Daniel. "You might actually have something. Here." Daniel leaned forward. "I need to know, how do we take them down?" Ed exhaled, setting his glass down with a soft clink. "The HOA operates under state law. That means if they're caught committing fraud, impersonating law enforcement, or engaging in financial misconduct," he tapped the screen, "we can make it a criminal case. And if we get enough homeowners on our side, we can file a class action lawsuit to wipe them out completely." A slow grin spread across Daniel's face. "Then let's do it." Daniel had played defense long enough. It was time to go on the attack. Daniel stood on his front porch, arms crossed, staring at his car. It was parked exactly where he wanted it, just a few inches over the so-called restricted zone. A normal HOA wouldn't even blink at something this minor, but Maplewood Estates wasn't normal. The hidden camera he'd placed across the street had a perfect view. The second he walked back inside, he started watching the live feed on his laptop. Now, all he had to do was wait. It didn't take long. At 11:47 p.m., 2 dark figures appeared on the screen. HOA security. Buzzcut and the wiry guy, the same 2 who had been harassing him since day 1. They moved fast, silent as shadows, one pulling out a flashlight while the other radioed someone. Daniel's heart pounded. This was it. Buzzcut circled the car, rubbing his chin like he was inspecting a crime scene. After a moment, he nodded to his partner. The wiry guy pulled out his radio and muttered something. Then from the far end of the street, a tow truck rolled into view. Daniel's jaw clenched. They didn't issue a warning. They didn't leave a violation notice. They were about to steal his car, but Daniel was ready for them. As soon as the tow truck driver hooked the chain under his car, Daniel made his move. He stepped out onto his porch, phone in hand. "Hey!" His voice cut through the night, sharp and commanding. The three men froze. Buzzcut turned, his face a mask of practiced authority. "Step back, sir. This vehicle is in violation of HOA guidelines and is being lawfully towed." Daniel smirked. "Yeah? Funny, because I just called the real police." Buzzcut's expression flickered, just for a second. Then he recovered. "Sir, we are the police presence in this neighborhood." He tapped his fake badge. "This is a legally authorized tow." Daniel held up his phone. "Nah. See, the actual cops are about a minute away, and I've got this all on video." The wiry guard took a step forward. "You think you're smart, don't you?" His voice was low. Dangerous. Daniel didn't flinch. "No. I think I just nailed you for grand theft auto and impersonating law enforcement." That's when the first squad car pulled up, then another, and another. Red and blue lights splashed across the street, sirens cutting through the tense silence. The tow truck driver froze, hands up, backing away from the vehicle. Buzzcut and his partner, however, held their ground. A real officer, Sergeant Alvarez, stepped out, resting a hand on his holstered weapon. "What the hell is going on here?" Buzzcut immediately switched tones. "Officer, we're just carrying out HOA business." "Drop the act," Daniel cut in. He pointed to Buzzcut's vest. "That badge is fake. These guys have been illegally fining residents, towing cars, and pretending they have police authority." "Sergeant?" Alvarez's eyes flicked between the guards. Then he nodded to his partner. "Check their IDs." The moment the officer reached for Buzzcut's badge, he pulled away. "You don't have jurisdiction here," he growled. The cops weren't amused. On the ground. "Now." Buzzcut hesitated. But then, seeing the numbers against him, he slowly dropped to his knees, hands behind his head. His partner followed. The tow truck driver. He was already sprinting down the street. The officers quickly detained the guards, confiscating their fake IDs. One cop popped the trunk of their security SUV and found a stash of boot locks, phony citations, and even a set of unregistered firearms. Daniel crossed his arms. "Guess the HOA's little empire is over." Sergeant Alvarez exhaled, shaking his head. "Yeah, and something tells me this goes a lot deeper than just these two." Daniel glanced at the lit-up houses around him. He could feel the eyes of his neighbors. Watching, for the first time in years, they saw what real justice looked like. And tomorrow, they'd make sure the rest of the HOA went down too. Buzzcut and his wiry partner were on their knees, hands zip-tied behind their backs, as the flashing red and blue lights painted eerie patterns across their stunned faces. The arrogance was gone now, replaced by something new, fear. Sergeant Alvarez rifled through the fake security badges, his jaw tightening. He looked at the other officers, then at Daniel. "These guys aren't law enforcement." His voice was edged with disbelief. "They're not even licensed security personnel." One of his officers checked the IDs against a state database on his tablet. A second later, he frowned. "Sir, these aren't registered with any security firm. Their neighborhood safety enforcement unit doesn't exist." Alvarez turned back to the two men on the ground. "You want to explain this?" Buzzcut stayed silent. His jaw locked. But the wiry guy, his confidence was crumbling. "We were just following orders," he muttered. Alvarez's eyes narrowed. "Whose orders?" Before the wiry guard could answer, a sleek black Mercedes came screeching to a stop at the curb. The driver's door flew open, and out stepped Martin Holloway. Dressed in his signature navy blue suit and HOA lapel pin, Holloway strode forward, his face a carefully constructed mask of control. "Officers, officers," he said, hands raised like a politician calming a crowd. "There's been a misunderstanding." Daniel watched, arms crossed. Oh, this was going to be good. Holloway turned to Alvarez. "I'm Martin Holloway, head of the Homeowners Association. These men work for us. I can assure you this is nothing more than a neighborhood security dispute." Alvarez arched a brow. "Neighborhood security?" He gestured at the confiscated, unregistered firearms, the phony citations, the illegal towing logs. "Mr. Holloway, your men have been impersonating law enforcement, issuing fraudulent fines, and extorting homeowners. Holloway's smile didn't waver, but Daniel saw it, the flicker of tension in his eyes. "I think you're misinformed, officer," Holloway said smoothly. "We run a strict community. Sometimes enforcement is necessary." Alvarez's patience was wearing thin. "Enforcement? You mean intimidation?" He glanced at Daniel. "Mr. Reeves, you said you had evidence?" Daniel didn't hesitate. He pulled out his phone and tapped the screen, airdropping every piece of footage to Alvarez's department. Surveillance videos, fake citations, financial records. Daniel listed. "This isn't just about harassment. The HOA's been running an illegal operation for years." Holloway's fake smile finally slipped. "Now, let's not be rash." And then he made his biggest mistake. He took a step closer to Alvarez, pulling a thick envelope from his jacket. "Maybe we can resolve this quietly," Holloway said, voice hushed. "A donation to your department. No need for paperwork." Alvarez froze. Daniel sucked in a breath. No way he was that stupid. One of the officers, who had been wearing a body cam the whole time, tilted his head slightly. "Sir, are you attempting to bribe a police officer?" Holloway's face went pale. "No, of course not. Alvarez didn't let him finish. "Cuff him." The moment the cold steel snapped around his wrists, Holloway's carefully crafted persona shattered. "This is a mistake," he barked, struggling. "I have powerful connections. You can't do this." Alvarez ignored him. "Martin Holloway, you're under arrest for bribery, fraud, and conspiracy to commit extortion." Buzzcut and the wiry guard watched in stunned silence as their boss was dragged toward the squad car. Daniel exhaled, the weight of months of harassment finally lifting. He turned to Alvarez. "What happens now?" Alvarez smirked. "Now, we dig deeper, and something tells me this is just the beginning." But for the first time in years, the residents of Maplewood Estates weren't afraid anymore, and neither was Daniel. The night air was thick with tension as Martin Holloway was shoved into the back of the squad car, his once pristine suit now wrinkled, his face pale with disbelief. "You can't do this," he snarled, his voice losing its usual smooth confidence. "I run this neighborhood. I make the rules." Sergeant Alvarez didn't even glance his way. He was too busy overseeing the arrests of Holloway's so-called security force. Buzzcut and the wiry guard were lined up against the patrol car, hands cuffed behind their backs. The officers had them dead to rights, impersonating law enforcement, fraud, and harassment. And the evidence? Overwhelming. Thanks to Daniel's surveillance footage, the police had proof of the HOA's years-long corruption. The fines, the threats, the illegal towing. It was all there, an ironclad case. One of the officers pulled out a radio. "Dispatch, we're gonna need additional units. This is bigger than we thought." And just like that, the empire Martin Holloway had built started to crumble. The next morning, the entire neighborhood was buzzing. Residents gathered in small groups, whispering in disbelief as the local news van pulled up near the entrance. "Breaking news! HOA president and fake security team arrested in massive fraud." Scandal reporters swarmed the scene, cameras rolling as officers carried out boxes of files from the HOA office. Daniel watched from his porch as two detectives flipped through stacks of financial records that showed just how deep the corruption went. Holloway and his board members had been pocketing thousands of dollars in fake fines. They had created sham violation fees, enforcing rules that didn't even exist just to squeeze more money from homeowners. Worse, they had been funneling a portion of it into private accounts, using the HOA as their personal piggy bank. When the news broke, something incredible happened. For the first time in years, the homeowners of Maplewood Estates weren't silent anymore. They spoke up. They told reporters about the harassment, the intimidation, the fear they had lived under. They shared stories of how the HOA had driven families away, stolen money, and ruined lives. And then they fought back. By the end of the week, a class-action lawsuit was filed. Daniel, along with dozens of homeowners, took legal action against the HOA. With Ed Mitchell, his retired lawyer neighbor, leading the charge, they compiled years of fraudulent transactions, illegal enforcement tactics, and property extortion. Within days, the case gained momentum. More news outlets picked up the story. More homeowners from other communities, places Holloway had controlled in the past, came forward with identical stories. The dominoes were falling, and soon the entire HOA was facing complete dissolution. 2 weeks later, Daniel stood in the town courthouse as the judge made his ruling. The Homeowners Association of Maplewood Estates is hereby disbanded. Effective immediately, all unlawful fines and fees collected under fraudulent pretenses will be returned to the residents. Martin Holloway and his associates will face trial on multiple charges, including fraud, embezzlement, and harassment. A cheer erupted from the courtroom. Daniel let out a slow breath, feeling something he hadn't since the day he moved in. Relief. Justice had been served. The HOA was finished. With Holloway gone, the residents finally took back their community. The fake security force was disbanded. The ridiculous arbitrary fines were erased. The once oppressive atmosphere of the neighborhood lifted like a storm clearing. And as Daniel sat on his porch that evening, watching the sunset over a neighborhood finally free, he knew one thing for certain. No one would ever let an HOA like this rise again, because this time, they fought back, and they won. The courtroom was silent as the judge delivered the final blow. The court finds Martin Holloway guilty on multiple counts, including fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit extortion. He is hereby sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. A murmur rippled through the packed gallery. Then, the sound of cheering. Daniel exhaled slowly, letting the weight of the moment sink in. It was over. Holloway sat at the defendant's table, his once impeccable suit now wrinkled, his face pale. The arrogance that once defined him was gone. The gavel had come down, and with it, the corrupt empire he had built over the years crumbled to dust. Across the room, Daniel's neighbors, people who had once lived in fear, smiled for the first time in years. They had won. Within weeks, the aftermath of the HOA's collapse reshaped Maplewood Estates. All fraudulent fines were refunded. Thousands of dollars returned to the homeowners who had been extorted for years. The corrupt HOA board was permanently disbanded. A new resident-led council was formed, one that actually worked for the people instead of preying on them. The fake security force? Gone. In their place, real neighborhood watch volunteers, actual residents who cared about the community, not about controlling it. Without Holloway's iron grip, the fear that had loomed over the neighborhood for so long finally lifted. The streets felt brighter. People greeted each other again. Families spent time outside without fear of harassment. For the first time in a long time, Maplewood Estates felt like home. The evening air was warm, filled with the smell of grilled steak and laughter. Daniel leaned back in his patio chair, watching as Lisa Thompson flipped burgers on the grill. Nearby, Ed Mitchell sipped his bourbon, looking more relaxed than Daniel had ever seen him. "Didn't think I'd live to see the day," the old lawyer muttered with a smirk. Daniel chuckled, raising his beer. To proving them wrong. All around them, the neighbors celebrated. A block party unlike any before. Kids played without worried parents watching over their shoulders. Music played from someone's speaker, a lively rhythm replacing the silence that had once defined the streets. The fake cops were gone. The intimidation was over, and the fear that had ruled this place? A distant memory. Lisa sat down beside Daniel, handing him a plate. "You did it, you know." Daniel shook his head. "No, we did." She smiled, clinking her drink against his. "Damn right." As the sun set over a neighborhood finally free, Daniel took a deep breath, letting the peace of it all sink in. No more fake cops, no more fines, no more intimidation, just good people, good food, and a life no longer ruled by fear. And for the first time since moving in, Daniel Reeves finally felt at home. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, share it with friends, and subscribe for more awesome content. Don't forget to tap the bell icon to stay updated. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from? Your support means the world.